On this episode of ITAV, we will discuss the importance of backing up your systems, both your systems as the IT or the AV integrator, as well as your customers. So stick around. We're going to talk about backup systems, all that and more, next on ITAV.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ITAV, episode 28, recorded Friday, March 29th, 2019. Back up.
AVNation is brought to you by Shure. Sound extraordinary.
This is the ITAV show, the monthly look at the AV industry and the IT industry and how the two come together. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. This month is going to be a little different. I've invited my buddy, Michael Drainer from Drainer Technology. Say hi, Michael.
Hello, everyone.
So Michael is not a little bit under the hood here at AVNation headquarters. Michael and I are kind of in the office together. We've been friends for ever and a day. But Michael's also our IT, our IT infrastructure, right? He's the guy who helps us do what we do. He's the reason that I have a computer internet connection and a network, and we've got all of our I almost said gigabytes. We have terabytes of storage of all of our shows and the trade shows and stuff like that we go to. We archive all that stuff because that's best practices. And if I don't, Bradford Ben yells at me. So this is, and I don't want to, this is not throwing Michael on the bus because this is a good story actually. But something that we've dealt with and something that you might want to consider as well is our backup, right? And I'm going to have Michael go through some of the specifics because I'm not smart enough to. I know enough to be dangerous. I understand that we have a server on site, right? And in talking with Michael and getting advice from Bradford as well, for years and years, you have to store your files in several different places in case of disaster and emergency and stuff like that. So we have one on site here. We also have a backup. We personally use Amazon S3, and we use Glacier for a lot of our stuff, especially our long-term storage stuff. But we have one here. And I'm going to let Michael take it from here as to we have one, we lost everything, and we got it back, and I didn't even know. So, Mr. Drainer.
Well, that's the point, Tim. The whole point.
No part is the point.
Yes, exactly. So you're absolutely right. Backup is critical, but one of the things that's often overlooked is the workflow for backup, as well as recovery and recovery time objectives and how long it takes to get your information back. So let me step back and kind of tell the story. So
tell the story, and then I have some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had been traveling or something, you were out of the office for some reason, and we were expanding the storage in our primary server here on premise. So at AVNation, we have a Dell Enterprise class server. It has terabytes of storage on it. And it's a combination of active production that's going on, as well as local archive of content and information, both audio and video. We needed to expand that storage, and in doing so, something happened that caused an error in the disk array, and we lost all of the AVNation files. Everything was gone.
For the last year, yes.
Yeah, for the last year, because the long-term stuff is in Glacier and on YouTube and whatnot. So there's nothing that will make an IT guy's heart sink faster than realizing that what you were just doing caused the massive loss of data, because it's very difficult to get that data back and very pricey. Fortunately, we have been working diligently on our backup and disaster recovery planning here at AVNation. And that is a multifaceted approach that involves 3 different locations, both real-time and snapshotted archives. So kind of walking through it from a 50,000-foot view. The files are located on a primary server here in the office. Those get backed up every hour. There's a snapshot taken of that server every hour, and it goes to another machine here on premise. And then that machine every night offloads to an offsite server at another location, where that data is saved for long-term disaster recovery. So what that does is it allows us a couple of things. One, if there is accidental file deletion, the on-premise box allows us to recover those files quickly, and that's what happened in this case, because we were able to recover terabytes of information in just a matter of about 3 hours. And like Tim said, the information was gone and it was all fully restored before he even knew that there was an issue the next morning, which is really a testament. Now we test this stuff on a regular basis, but if we hadn't, this would have definitely been proof that things are working. So the next step is the offsite, and this is really important because we've heard about ransomware and malware and things like that in the news and media lately. If our offices were to be compromised with ransomware, and both the local backup and the local primary server were compromised as a result of that, that's where our offsite storage comes into play, because it is separate from the network. It is not directly connected. And so it does not run the risk of infection from the same virus or malware or ransomware that would take over this office. So that's kind of the 50,000 foot view. Now, here's the important elements of this. One, this was not a haphazard approach. This is something that we've been planning for some time, walking through contingency plans. How are we going to deal with this situation? How are we going to deal with that situation? What happens if it's a ransomware? What happens if it's accidental deletion? What happens if the building burns? Because we're in a leased space. There are, 5 other offices here? Yeah, we actually share a building with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So you know how crazy people can get there. Who knows, right? Anything could happen. So we walk through all of those scenarios, not just from a backup standpoint, but from a recovery. How quickly can we recover from each one of those events? And what is the impairment to the organization with the time frame that it's going to take to recover? And so I think we demonstrated here that accidental deletion, we can recover very quickly. And I'm really proud of the fact that you didn't know that it happened till I told you that it had happened.
Well, see, here's the thing. That is right there is the key. And people much smarter than I am have written and talked about for years the AV as a service, the service model. There's something that there's an SLA, right? And the SLA is a service level agreement, right? And there are several products on the market that will help you do that, will help you tell your client that, hey, there was a problem,
yep,
and I fixed it already. I'm not going to play favorites. I do have a couple of favorites. You can email me if you'd like and ask me mine. But because I've used a couple of these, I've gone through some of their trainings, and they're very slick, right? These are folks that will do push notifications to you, the integrator, or the IT professional, saying, hey, there's something wrong with the network. There's something wrong with this network device. Understanding I'm saying network an awful lot because the network is the key, and the ability to get that information out of the client's network and into the cloud of some sort, and the cloud then will push it to you. You can do this with certain control systems, absolutely. There are certain pieces of code that you can write to make sure that the control system can then connect. It is still connected to an RS-232 device. So there's RS-232, which is two-way communication. There's also IP, which is also two-way communication. Cannot do it with IR. Sorry, can't get there from here. Certain types of CEC codes and certain types of CEC is available. I still personally do not much care for CEC, mainly because it's a standard without a standard. It's something that I believe last time I checked, everybody agreed on. Power on is the only unifying command structure for CEC between your consumer DVD player and your consumer television. But 9 times out of 10, if you're deploying something in a commercial space or even a high-end residential space, you're doing it with something that either has IP control or RS-232 still. So that part is key. The fixing it before the client knows is key. But I want to back up for a couple things and ask a couple questions about specifically what you were talking about. Number one, workflow. I think I still don't know that I know completely what this is, so I'm going to ask the question. When it comes to backup and recovery and making sure that things are there when they're supposed to be there, what do you mean when you say workflow?
Very good question. So think of it as a flow chart, if you will. If you were to execute a blueprint of your business, what does it look like when you create your product or you create your service. So it doesn't matter if you're an integrator or you're or a content producer like AVNation. We have a workflow, right? And so that workflow is everything from Tim and the rest of the production team scheduling interviews to booking the Zoom meetings to doing the recording. So what happens from there, right? So you kind of document those processes right up front. And there's a couple of reasons that we do this. One, we're looking for inefficiencies in the process. Two, we're looking for places that data is acquired and determining what data is important in that process as well. So when we start to blueprint the business, we're able to figure out real quick where those data points are and then determine where the critical elements are. So in the AVNation workflow, what we found is that a lot of content was resting on the editor's computer for long periods of time. And that left that content vulnerable. So we had to deploy a interim backup solution for that particular machine until that content is ready to be put onto the server and uploaded to the proper distribution systems, right? So we're mapping out that workflow. We're determining where the points of vulnerability are. We're putting appropriate procedures in place to protect that information, and then we're writing standard operating procedures for recovering that information if there is a breach, a compromise, a data loss event, or anything along those lines throughout that process. Right. So, and this is something that you do not only for your data, but you do this throughout your entire organization. And you mentioned tools, right, that help you automate this process. So we use a tool called Autotask PSA. And this is a professional service automation platform that does what you were describing. It allows us to set SLAs for our customers, to monitor events remotely. So all of the backups that run at AVNation actually report automatically into our PSA environment. When I see a backup that doesn't go or that there's an error, we can immediately respond to that, and it starts tracking our response. If our techs don't get to that in time, then it gets escalated to a manager to be able to address that issue, right? And so that's all part of service delivery. Well, if you don't take the time to blueprint your business and to blueprint your customer's business, then you really can't effectively deploy SLAs. You can't effectively support that client in a timely fashion and have the results that we've had with AVNation in being able to resolve issues before the manager or owner even knows that they exist, right? So it's really a culture that you have to adopt. It's a philosophy that you have to adopt from a business perspective, and really understand that every single thing that you do, everything you touch, there is a process, there's a procedure, there's a data point, there's risk, there's vectors for infiltration, there's vectors for loss. You have to identify those throughout your entire workflow, both internally and externally, within your own organization and with your clients.
All right, so workflow, correct me if I'm wrong. It is kind of dependent on what you do, though. I mean, because obviously we are a content creation company. What
Yes.
we have would be different than the engineering staff of our friends over at CTI, right?
And that's the thing. We spend a tremendous amount of time. People say, "Oh, you're an IT company," right? It's like, yes, but the majority of our time is really spent working on business issues. It's spent consulting on the risk assessment of the particular organization. So you take an integrator, for instance, such as you referenced. The amount of information that they produce at a given time versus what you produce at a given time are vastly different. The risk is different, right? So some organizations, they're generating quotes, they might be doing 30, 40, 50 quotes or proposals an hour, where others are doing 1 or 2 or 3 a day. And so the risk of that smaller organization is much less in being able to recreate that versus a larger organization who's generating a tremendous amount of content. So it really is case by case. There's not a one size fits all. So like I said, here at AVNation, we're taking hourly snapshots. So at any given time, the most you are ever going to have at risk is 1 hour worth of content that's been created. And that really allows us to hedge that risk. But that might really be overkill for an organization such as an integrator who's really just dealing with quotes and things like that. Documents and schematics, the amount of information that a CAD operator can create in an hour versus the amount of video content you can create are vastly different.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about backup. Both you and Bradford Ben, and if you don't know Bradford, he's not only part of our board, but also he has been kind of our security expert. He's our webmaster, and he's also one of the guys that, in addition to Michael, really kind of put into my head the need to back things up into several places. Talk about the three places. And obviously one is here, or wherever here is for you. It's where you physically are. There's going to be a backup somewhere on premise, or on prem, to use the terminology. Where then is the other two, and how do those three sync?
So really great question. So there's always going to be your primary storage. This is your active working environment. This could be a local server. It could be just a local workstation. It could be files that you're keeping in the cloud on Google Drive or Microsoft SharePoint. It's wherever your working documents are. And I want to take a small segue here and just say, just because your information's in the cloud does not mean it's safe. And it's not safe.
Why?
We've run into multiple situations with clients where their primary file storage was just in Dropbox or just in Google Cloud, and they're relying on their snapshotting capability within that ecosystem, and it's failed. Some it's worked, some it's failed. The problem is that you don't have control over that situation, and you're leaving it wholeheartedly into a single environment to deal with, and that's really putting your data at risk. So I say that to say, whether your information is local or in the cloud, that's your primary location. Your second location is going to be something that is easily accessible, something that you can quickly grab and recover files and documents or even system images from in the event that that primary fails. So this is part of your business continuity plan. How do I continue to operate my business quickly in the event of data loss, right? If we have to go to Amazon Glacier and we got to wait for entire system images to download, I mean, literally we could be waiting days or even up to a week, depending on how big the image is that we need to download from Glacier, because it's limited on bandwidth. You pay by transfer. It gets very, very expensive very fast. So maintaining a local copy is critical to be able to maintain business continuity in the event that primary is gone. So that's typically going to be a replicating backup. That means that whatever goes onto the first one goes onto the second one. Now, the danger in that is that if those both reside locally, in the event of like ransomware, for instance, or a localized disaster, both copies are gone. So we have to have a third that is in another location that is not easily accessible to natural disaster or localized events, so that we can recover that if we see a larger data loss event, right? Now, without getting into the nitty-gritty details, there are ways to do that with cloud environments. And we spend a lot of time working with clients on cloud versus local. And I am definitely an advocate of the cloud. But I find a lot of folks are working heavily in the cloud and putting their businesses at risk because they don't have a business continuity and data loss and recovery plan that will work if that goes down. So what happens if your internet goes down? You can't get to the cloud, right? You don't have access to get to that information. You have it local, you do. That's just one. I think the point here is that we go through all of those scenarios, right? We sit down and we go through that entire workflow. What's important to you? How do you do your business? What do your customers expect of you? And then we make a determination, what is the best course of action? Should you be local or should you be cloud? And of those two, what is the best business continuity, backup, and recovery plans for that data?
All right. So the one thing I want to end up on here is the service part.
Mhm.
And we talked about a little bit earlier, but the fact that remains is that something happened, right? And me as the client, as the customer, knew nothing about it. What is the best? I guess, and this is a little bit personal, a little bit personal preference, but also, from a business best practice standpoint, what do you think is the best practice for you as the service provider, right, to get notification, to be made aware of something happening, and then how quickly should you turn around and fix it, and then how do you let your client know, hey, something happened?
Yeah, those are great questions. So one of the challenges faced by many integrators is they tend, let's put it this way, the bulk of integrators tend to be smaller organizations.
Hmm.
You have the same guy doing the design, system engineering, design work, helping out with the deployment, commissioning, right? It's the same person dealing with all of that. So it's difficult to manage that workflow when you're a one-man operation or two or three-man operation or woman operation. So it's really taking the time to map your own business and implement the correct tools that are going to help you monitor your customer systems efficiently and be able to respond to those issues and creating margin in your business to be able to do so. And if you can't, then finding a good third party partner to help. And I'm going to use that as a testimony within our own organization. So we're a small company. Um, as we got started, there was no way I myself could respond, take care of sales, marketing, service delivery, implementation, right, all the way down the board. So I had to find a competent third party to partner with to help deal with my day-to-day support issues. So they are my level 1, level 2 triage. They're the ones that are answering the phone when something goes wrong. They're watching them, making sure that alerts are getting addressed, and then escalating them to me and my team only when it's something that they can't resolve on their own or they can't resolve remotely. And so that's become very, very valuable in our ability to deliver service to our client base and make sure that our customers are happy. Does it take margin out of my pocket? Absolutely. It takes money out, but it allows me the overhead in my time to be able to grow my company, focus on the business, and scale, and make sure that my customers like AVNation are getting the service that they need and deserve.
But couldn't you, and this is a business question, couldn't you work that into your margins, right? Couldn't you work that into your SLAs where it shouldn't take money out of your pocket, right? Where it's, it's part of the part of the package, I guess.
Well, it is, right? So look, here's the reality. And maybe I misspoke that. You're paying for it one way or another as a service provider.
Yeah.
You're paying a staff member. You're taking it out of your own time and loss, or you're paying a third party to do it, manage it. And I think the problem that I've seen with a lot of integrators is they tend to want to keep it all within their own ecosystem. They want to hoard it, right? It's my customer. I'm not turning it over. They don't trust anyone but me. And quite frankly, that attitude is not going to win you clients in the long run. It's actually going to lose you business, right? Our largest IT client, we talk to them on a quarterly basis, mostly just doing business reviews. The rest of the time, they're interacting with our third-party help desk and network operations center to deal with their day-to-day issues. And they absolutely love it. We're transparent about it. They know that we're using a third party. They know that if there's an issue, how to escalate that issue. And they're very satisfied with the results because they're getting what they need in order to support their business and continue to grow their organization. And that creates a trust relationship between the two of us in that they know I'm holding our third party accountable, and then I'm able to work on the strategic things with them that they weren't able to do with their previous provider.
All right, last question here, and then we'll let everybody go. Best practices for finding a good backup solution, right? Because you use
that's a Pandora's box.
Well, you use a couple different services, I know.
Yes.
And obviously, there are folks, you've had clients that you've started with that, we use Dropbox, and then you've already illustrated why that's not necessarily a great idea. But what is a good way to find a good backup company, a backup partner?
That's a really good question. Look, at its core, if you're gonna do it yourself, find a turnkey solution. And there's a number of turnkey solutions out there from companies like Carbonite and Backblaze, and trying to think of some. There's about 4 or 5 others that are direct to cloud backup solutions, and that in its most basic form is going to get you that offsite backup capability. And for just basic file and folder restore, that's a fine solution. But if you're a slightly larger organization where you have more than 3 or 4 PCs, and you're housing client data, you're keeping CAD drawings and documents and things like that, you actually have a fiduciary responsibility to your client to make sure that that information and its integrity is held properly so that you could support that customer. So that's where more robust is, and that's going to be providers like Datto, Altero, Veeam, when we start talking about server-side recovery. But I think the important thing here is not so much the tool that's being used as much as making sure that that process is well defined, it's tested, it's proven, and you're able to execute the plan. So frankly, I don't care who you use. I want to know, can the plan be executed? Is the data safe? And can you recover and keep your business running? That's what's important to me. I want business continuity. I don't care about the fancy tools. What's going to work?
Yeah, and let me just make sure it works. So, and honestly, make sure you do it.
well, that's just it, right? So the more you can automate, the better. And that's where partnering with a good third-party service provider who really understands backup and disaster recovery, not just from a technology standpoint, but from a business perspective, is so critical. That they understand your business and what's important to you, and they take the time to constantly review your backup and recovery processes. And if you're not doing disaster testing at least once a year with your provider, you need to find a new provider. If they're not pushing you to do those tests, and I mean, frankly, here at AVNation, I've done disaster testing here, right? We've gone through that process where we've taken the server offline and we failed over to the backup, and we're able to recover, and then we did it unintentionally. Right? But because it was tested, we knew that it worked. You get that sinking feeling, but you can recover, right? And you're confident in your capability to continue to operate. So I'm not saying this to try to prop up, hey, you need an MSP, a managed service provider. But if you're someone who is really concerned about this and you don't have the staff and the overhead, and many integrators don't, to really manage this process, it is not that expensive to do. It really is a drop in the bucket compared to the revenue that you're generating on a day-by-day and hour-by-hour basis.
Well, it's also a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to lose if it fails, or if you haven't done it.
Absolutely, because it impacts your ability to deliver service to your customers, which now affects your revenue stream. So it's not just, hey, I can't generate a quote today. Oh, wait, my service tech can't get to the Visio drawings, or they can't get to the CAD documents that we need to support this customer. University's down. We've got the image of the Crestron processor stored in our cloud drive. Oh, wait, Google Cloud's down for whatever reason. And hey, I'm going to tell you, it happens. Mm-hmm. Look at what happened here. Was it last year when the entire Eastern Seaboard, Amazon lost half the Eastern Seaboard, Netflix was down, Dropbox was down. It happens, folks.
Yep.
So this is a real threat. These are real issues. And, a lot of folks say, well, I'm going to take the cheap and I'm going to put in a drive and I'm just going to copy it once a week. Well, you know what? It's better than nothing, but that's not going to keep your business operating and your customers happy when things hit the fan.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. That'll be a good positive note. Mr. Drainer, where can people find you, sir?
DrainerTechnologies.com. I'm also on Twitter at Michael Drainer. You can find us there, and check us out on our YouTube channel, which is going to be coming here very shortly. We're going to be rolling out a whole new series of tutorials on voice over IP, backup and disaster recovery, and putting together content and information to help you succeed better at your business.
Very cool. All right. For us here at AVNation, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. We just got back from Digital Signage Expo 2019 in Vegas, so check out all those interviews. Also, our 2 weekly programs. One is called Resi Week. It looks at the residential side of AV, and AV Week looks at the commercial side. So all that and more at avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for ITAV.